I'm Ben Meiselas from the MeidasTouch network. Donald Trump continues to be obsessed over his fear of being criminally indicted, both by Special Counsel Jack Smith in the Department of Justice, as well as by Fulton County District Attorney Fani Willis. Over the weekend, he took to his social media platform during the early morning hours and started ranting and raving in these just completely unhinged posts. And let's just go through them so you can see the disinformation that he's putting out there, the projection that he's putting out there, and ultimately how these posts are ultimately going to be used as evidence against him in criminal proceedings. So first, let's talk about the one that he wrote about the Department of Justice. And this is what Donald Trump writes. He goes, DOJ didn't need a search warrant for my home, but they did need it for Biden, who has not been forthcoming, had no rights to declassify, and had no security in many different locations, even Chinatown. He won't give the 1,850 boxes of documents stored in Delaware. Why not? I have done everything correctly under the Presidential Records Act. He didn't. As president, I had the absolute right to declassify, not Biden. Unfair and unequal treatment under the law, Fourth Amendment violation, and more. Let's just go through each and every one of these lines just to see what a liar he is. Let's just go in order. DOJ didn't need a search warrant for my home, but they did need it for Biden, who has not been forthcoming, had no rights to declassify, and had no security in many locations, even Chinatown. Well, it's a long sentence, so let's break it down. President Biden, as well as former Vice President Pence, both volunteered and offered to have the Department of Justice voluntarily search all of their residences. So a search warrant wasn't needed because they were welcomed in. Biden and Pence said, look, we've got nothing to hide. Come and take a look for yourself. What did Donald Trump do? When Donald Trump left office in January of 2021, he immediately stole records, thousands of records, including classified records and sensitive compartmented information. He sent it to Mar-a-Lago. He concealed and hid it at Mar-a-Lago. And when the National Archives back in 2021 said, hey, can we get these? Seems like we're missing some records. Do you have records? He said no. He advised his lawyers to lie and to tell the National Archives that there were no records. The National Archives then had to do their own investigation and realized that thousands of records were missing. Ultimately, Donald Trump himself cherry-picked certain records that he was going to turn over. In January of 2022, he returned 15 boxes that it's reported that Trump himself kind of hand-selected and cherry-picked which documents, which included a lot of newspaper clippings, government records, and then he kind of hid the sensitive compartmented information and the top secret information inside the newspaper clippings, apparently thinking the National Archives weren't going to go through it. And then he said, look, this is everything that I have. He then instructed his lawyers like Evan Corcoran and Christina Bobb to continue to lie to the National Archives. The archives then turned it over to the Department of Justice because Trump was lying to them and they needed to get their records back, including very sensitive compartmented information, our nation's highest level of top secret information that exists. And throughout this process, Trump and his lawyers continue to lie. The Department of Justice sends their top counterintelligence official to meet with Trump's lawyers, Evan Corcoran and Christina Bobb, in June of 2022 after they have to serve a subpoena from one of the grand juries in Washington, D.C. in order to get the records back. Christina Bobb, one of Trump's lawyers, although she's claiming she was acting as a custodian of records, signed an attestation under oath stating that a diligent search of Mar-a-Lago was conducted. Here are all of the records. She put it in a red weld folder. Those are those legal folders that you see lawyers walking into court with. There was sensitive compartmented documents in there and top secret records, as well as other records. She said, that's it. No other records at all. The Department of Justice knew that was a lie. They also had gotten surveillance footage and have sources inside Mar-a-Lago knowing that this was continual obstruction of justice by Trump and his lawyers. So finally, a search warrant had to be executed at Mar-a-Lago. A magistrate judge, meaning a federal magistrate judge in the Southern District of Florida, found that there was probable cause that Donald Trump committed crimes, including crimes in violation of the Espionage Act, concealment and mutilation of records, and obstruction of justice. And then on August 8th of 2022, the search warrant was lawfully executed at Mar-a-Lago, and they found thousands of government records, including over 100 top secret and sensitive compartmented information documents. And look, we learned in the past 2 or 3 weeks even, and we reported it here on the MeidasTouch network, that there was additional documents that were found as recently as like January on laptops of Donald Trump's aides, and so which had to be turned over to the Department of Justice. So the DOJ did need a search warrant. Donald Trump was not forthcoming at all. He's been the exact opposite, where Biden and Pence said, look, search anything you want. You have free reign. Any documents that may exist were completely inadvertent, and please search. We have no problems with it. So everything that Donald Trump there says is a lie. And then Donald Trump goes, even Chinatown, I'm trying to think what he's even referring to Chinatown. I mean, obviously Trump is racist, so he wants to inject racism and xenophobia into this. I don't know what he's referring to. On the one hand, one of the conspiracy theories that Trump and MAGA Republicans have suggested is because the University of Pennsylvania received donations from China, and there's a Biden Institute within UPenn. There's no evidence at all that the Biden Institute has received any money from China, but a lot of American colleges have received money from people linked to the Chinese government in general. Many universities to fund various research, but he's used that to basically say that it was funded by the Chinese. And so I don't know if that's what he's referring to. One of the things in weird conspiracies he's also spread relates to the fact that George H.W. Bush had certain presidential records that were kept in a building that was leased by the National Archives that once had a Chinese restaurant in the building and a bowling alley. So that's when Donald Trump says a lot of times, like, oh, they just store their documents in a Chinese restaurant in a bowling alley because it once had a Chinese restaurant inside a building. I'm not sure if that's what he's referring to. But as I said on the Legal AF podcast, when you read the statements by Donald Trump, it reads like the kind of petulant third grader who has racist parents who like goes into school and just says something like horrific. And you were like, you can't say that. Well, what are you talking about, Jimmy? Is this what your parents are saying to you? Because, I mean, it's just so despicable and amateurish and just frankly, it's like disgraceful. It's embarrassing to read this and know that this is someone who represented our country at one point. That's how I feel about it. And Donald Trump goes on to say, I've done everything correctly under the Presidential Records Act. He didn't. Again, just a complete and utter lie. Trump did everything wrong under the Presidential Records Act. He stole records. And then when he talks about this whole like declassification, as I've always mentioned before, none of the crimes Donald Trump is being criminally investigated for have anything to do with the classification status, whether the documents are classified or not, right? The crimes Trump is being investigated for are his theft of government records generally. You can't steal records. Now, in my own view, if he did claim, or if he's claiming that he telepathically, that was a claim that he made, declassified records, I actually think it makes it worse, not better for him. Because first, there is a declassification process that people have to follow, that presidents have to follow. And you'd have to let your national security advisor, like Robert O'Brien at the time, know, hey, I'm declassifying this. And why would you let him know that? Well, because there are foreign assets and our troops and American agents who could be burned if documents that are supposed to be classified are declassified without the appropriate steps being taken to protect the lives. So frankly, if he declassified records, and by the way, you have certain Trump aides who bragged and said, oh, I was there when he declassified records, like Kash Patel said that about Russia, about other things important to our national security. Well, if he didn't go through the process, like that could result and may have resulted in our troops being killed. One of the things that is just kind of brushed under the rug by large media networks is the fact that MBS, the leader of Saudi Arabia, bragged in 2018 or 2019 that he had Jared Kushner in his pocket, and also bragged that Jared Kushner gave classified records to MBS regarding the enemies list to Saudi Arabia that America had developed, and then Saudi Arabia swiftly killed everybody on its enemies list based on classified information that Jared Kushner gave them, when Jared Kushner couldn't even secure a security clearance, but he was given access to all of our national secrets. And then obviously the quid pro quo after the Trump administration was done. Jared Kushner, actually on January 6th, he was flying back from the Middle East because he was meeting with people in the Middle East and people in Saudi Arabia to cut this deal where he would get $2 billion and manage the money of the Saudi Sovereign Wealth Fund, even though Kushner has no experience managing, being a hedge fund manager or a money manager at all. So anyway, going back to the classification status, like to me, it makes it worse. But regardless, Trump isn't being criminally investigated for having classified records. It's that he stole government records. And then when Trump goes unfair and unequal treatment under the law, Fourth Amendment violation, and more. Look, if you thought that there was a Fourth Amendment violation, then you could have filed a motion in federal court. You could file a motion today. The only motion that you filed in federal court before Judge Eileen Cannon, and everybody, you remember Judge Eileen Cannon, the corrupt judge, was a process that tried to slow down what the Department of Justice did by bringing in a special master. But you ultimately lost before the 11th Circuit and the Supreme Court that there should never have been a special master appointed in the first place, and that there was no right to in any way have an injunction that stopped the Department of Justice's criminal investigation. Regardless, you never even asserted in that case a Fourth Amendment violation. You know why? Because there is no Fourth Amendment violation, because the magistrate judge found probable cause that a crime was committed. So there is no Fourth Amendment violation. So everything Donald Trump is saying here is completely and absolutely false. Why is he obsessed with this? Because he is nervous. People like Special Counsel Jack Smith, like real serious people, are kryptonite to Donald Trump. That's what keeps Donald Trump up late at night and in the morning posting these things. And he thinks these statements are helpful. They're not. I mean, these are going to be used as evidence by Special Counsel Jack Smith in the ultimate indictments against Donald Trump. Let's just turn to the next post quickly that he made. He goes, this is about Georgia. He goes, there is no case against me in Georgia because I did nothing wrong. But in any event, and everyone agrees, the out-of-control foreperson who did an illegal and unprecedented media tour during the process makes the case dead for a second reason. Same in New York City, where the Democrat prosecutor actually wrote and released a book during the witch hunt, tainted both Trump derangement syndrome coupled with prosecutorial misconduct. For those listeners of the MeidasTouch network and the various podcasts I do, like the MeidasTouch podcast or Legal Beatdown that I do with Michael Cohen, or the podcast that I do called Legal AF, and some of the other podcasts, one of the things I said is that you know that if anyone ever speaks out regarding the grand jury, special grand jury, anything, what Trump likes to do and what MAGA Republicans always want to do is play the victim. Oh, now my due process rights have been violated. I mean, meanwhile, Trump goes on these social media platforms and continues to post all of these prejudicial things. He calls for the termination of the Constitution. And what he tries to do is bait people, right? And Jack Smith will never be baited. And what Trump does when he's trying to attack Jack Smith, and he's attacking Jack Smith's wife and family and friends. I mean, remember, we've done videos where Trump just attacks everyone in Jack Smith's inner circle. He's trying to bait Jack Smith so that Jack Smith slips or says something. And then what does Donald Trump do? Play the victim. Oh, my due process rights. It's all tainted now. It's all tainted now. That is just one of his loser tactics, because he is a loser and they always love to play the victim. And one of the things I said here on the MeidasTouch Network is when Donald Trump posted total exoneration after the special grand jury report came out, and Judge Robert McBurney only released the 3 portions to protect the due process rights of people whose names may have been listed. I said the reason why Trump's saying total exoneration when it's actually the exact opposite is he wants to bait someone into making a statement. And maybe even bait the media to ask a special grand juror a question, and then he could say, oh, I'm the victim. And look, I think the special grand juror foreperson who went on the media, I think the media appearances were, I'll just say, questionable, and I wish she had better advisors near her who could have at least prepared her. But as Judge Robert McBurney said, there's nothing wrong with it. I think that it wasn't necessary. It certainly wasn't helpful. And it gives Trump an argument to make, even though it's a loser argument for Trump to make. But this is exactly what we said here on the MeidasTouch Network, if you recall our other videos, that he would try to do. And here he is doing it. And it's because he only has a few moves. It's fascist checkers. It's definitely not chess. But once you know his moves, it's very easy to predict what he's going to do and how he's going to do it. And it's very repetitive. And here it's just playing the victim card. She went on TV. It's tainted. This is tainted. That's tainted. Prosecutorial misconduct. And look, as I've said before on the various podcasts, there's no way that what the foreperson did is going to result in any motion to dismiss being granted. It just gives an unnecessary argument. But you see how obsessed Trump is with this. It's why it's so important, though, to keep everything as hermetically sealed and as tight as possible here, with as little to no mistakes as possible. We want our prosecutors to be very organized here. And this also highlights the need to bring Donald Trump to justice now, to bring him to justice immediately. And I look forward to reporting in the next few weeks and months regarding other prosecutions that taking place. And so just want to thank you all for watching this, listening to this analysis that we do, and explaining it. And then you now sharing the message with people that you know, and educating others and sharing this YouTube channel with others that you know. That's a big, big help. While you're watching this, if you can, subscribe to not just the YouTube channel. We're on our way to 1 million subscribers, but check out the MeidasTouch podcast. So wherever you get your audio podcasts, just search MeidasTouch Podcast, hit subscribe, leave a 5-star review there. I think you will really enjoy the podcasts I do with my brother. So wherever you get your podcasts, make sure you subscribe. Until next time, I'm Ben Meiselas. Oh, by the way, you can check us out at patreon.com/MeidasTouch as well. patreon.com/MeidasTouch. We got a lot of exclusive content there with those paid memberships at Patreon. It helps grow this independent media platform since we don't have outside investors. So if you can join on Patreon, that's how we fund these operations. So check us out at patreon.com/MeidasTouch. Until next time, I'm Ben Meiselas, and thank you so much.
Love this video? Then you'll love the MeidasTouch podcast. Listen as my brothers and I break down the latest news and chat with top political leaders on the fastest growing pro-democracy podcast in the world. New episodes drop every Tuesday and Friday. Add the MeidasTouch podcast right now wherever you listen to your podcasts.